I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. I just won one of the greatest elections of all time in the history of this country, and even you will admit that. And now I have somebody writing a report that never got a vote? It's called the Mueller report. So explain that, because my voters don't get it, and I don't get it. Now, at the same time, let it come out, let people see it.
President Trump calling for transparency in the Mueller investigation, saying the special counsel's report should be released to the public when it's done. Let's bring in our headliner, Saul Weissenberg, former deputy independent counsel and a Fox News contributor. Saul, good morning to you and welcome to America's Newsroom. So before I ask you, thank you for being here. So before I ask you the should it be made public, can it be? Can the entire report be released to the public in its entirety?
Probably not. You have two issues. One, you've got the rule that says you can't reveal grand jury information. That's Rule 6E. For Mueller or Barr to reveal that information, you'll have to have a court order. Number two, there's some national security sensitive information which will probably never be revealed. But other than that, it's really just up to the Attorney General.
You think it should be?
I do think as much as possible should be revealed. I think people are very curious about it. It's taken up almost 2 years now, so I think it's in the public interest for it to be revealed, whatever it should.
You say, obviously, the Mueller report, the Mueller investigation was built around the idea of looking into Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. You say that it's fair to assume at this point that there is no significant sign of at least criminal collusion or contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia. Why do you say that?
Well, because we would have seen it. Again, collusion is kind of a nothing word. When I say collusion, I mean, as you point out, John, criminal collusion. That is to say, a conspiracy that violates a provision of our criminal code. And I think we would have seen it now in all of the various plea agreements and statements of the offense that go along with plea agreements that have been issued by Bob Mueller and his team. Really, almost all of these have to do with obstruction of justice or lying to the government. If there was a larger case, I believe we would have seen it by this time. So I don't think it's there.
I want to get your take on the debate that is happening right now. Some Democrats running for president are bringing up the idea of packing the Supreme Court. Lawmakers, some of them weighing in. Senator Marco Rubio has penned a piece published on FoxNews.com saying the Supreme Court needs to stay at 9 justices. Dems' court-packing plan is all wrong. In that piece, he talks about our institutions suffering a crisis. We should do no further harm. He's going to propose a constitutional amendment that would prevent changing the face of our Supreme Court. Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, I'm not in favor of changing the number of justices. I'm not in favor of this court-packing plan. As you know, the only time it's ever been tried in American history was by FDR, and it resulted in a crushing blow to him. It really damaged his popularity in a way that he never recovered from until the beginning of the Second World War. But I don't think we need a constitutional amendment. I don't think it's going to happen. We don't need to have a constitutional amendment every time somebody is worried about something. I don't think it's going to pass, so I don't think that's necessary. Could I go back and make one point about the collusion issue that I forgot to make?
Please do.
Here's why I think collusion is so centrally important. Number one, this is the main thing that Bob Mueller was appointed to find out.
Exactly.
And if the collusion narrative by the left, look, if it's there, we want to know about it. But if, in fact, there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, that's a big thing because it forces the Democrats to look into, if they're intelligent, why they lost. They're telling themselves, too many of them, well, we lost because of improper collusion between Trump and the Russians, not because we didn't have the right message. And so it's allowed them not to look at themselves and say, how the hell did we lose to this guy? But I mean, perhaps we are advocating programs that are far to the left of what mainstream America wants. So I don't think we should just go. The Democrats are people in Congress are saying, well, there's not collusion, but there's this. Let's go to the next issue. Let's go to the campaign finance. But it's actually very, very important.
Many Democrats,
the Trump people did not collude with the Russians to rig the election. I think it's important.
Some Democrats on Capitol Hill, though, or in Congress, have said if they're not satisfied, if they don't like the Mueller report, they're going to keep on going with investigations in Congress. What do you think?
Well, that's their right. They've got a majority in the House, and I'm sure we'll have all kinds of fights, as we always do, between the congressional branch that issues the subpoenas and the executive branch of another party that doesn't want to follow them. We had them under Obama. Remember, the House held Eric Holder in contempt because he didn't provide information that they wanted. That's just part of the glory of American democracy.
Finally, we want to ask you about the president is now set to sign this executive order on campus free speech. Earlier this month, he said he would issue an executive order, quote, requiring colleges and universities to support free speech if they want federal research dollars. Is this a good path to go down for the president and use an executive order?
Well, first of all, there is a tremendous, as you know, a tremendous free speech and due process problem on campuses today. If it's a state campus, you can go in and file suit. And in fact, I think out of the 130 suits filed on due process issues having to do with Title IX, I think the universities have lost every single one, if I'm not mistaken. I was reading that the other day. I'm a little skeptical about executive orders saying basically even to private colleges you'll lose your money if you don't support free speech, only for this reason. I mean, I haven't seen the proposal, so I'd need to look at it. Because you don't want a situation where every time a new party comes in power, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to try to put forth their favorite proposal and threaten to withhold money if you don't follow our new federal regulations. So do we really want to go that route?
We'll hear more from the president on that this afternoon. Saul Weisenberg, a former deputy independent counsel and also a brand new Fox News contributor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Saul.
Thank you.
All right, so the media predictably absolutely giddy about the Mueller nonsense memos, frankly, gleefully echoing the phony, the false talking point that Trump committed felonies. Well, he didn't. Take a look.
In a lot of ways, it cannot be underscored that these memos really aren't about Cohen. I mean, they are about Cohen, but they really point to the president in a way we haven't seen before.
This is the first time that federal prosecutors are accusing the president of the United States of having directed a crime.
I'm willing to bet that there is good evidence that Trump had the requisite intent to commit this crime as well.
Michael Cohen's 2 campaign finance felonies were directed by a person named as Individual 1. That person is Donald Trump. That means that Donald Trump also committed 2 felonies.
The Department of Justice today, in the most explicit terms, said the President of the United States committed 2 felonies. Just said it right, came out and said it.
All right, joining us now, the Hill's media reporter Joe Concha and American First Action senior advisor Sean Spicer. You know, what they're forgetting is Michael for a long time said that he did it without anybody's knowledge, Sean, and they did it on his own with an entity he created and didn't tell the president, and only later the president found out and paid the money back, which, by the way, the president, as Greg Jarrett and Larry Elder have analyzed tonight, would be perfectly able to do with his own funds, which is what ultimately he did pay him back. So what they're saying here is they want to believe one version of Michael Cohen that fits their narrative, but not remind people of the other narrative of Michael Cohen. Which one do you believe?
Well, not only that, but if you read the complaint, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they talk about Michael Cohen's taxi medallions, failure to pay taxes, a bunch of things that have nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do with collusion, and nothing to do with this campaign. And then you see some of these reporters say in the clips that you just showed that the Department of Justice said the following. It said nothing of the sort. And yet, to your point in your opening monologue, these reporters are so fixed on going after this president, they will literally make stuff up. It amazes me, for as much as they despise the term fake news, the clips that you just showed the lengths to which they will go to make things up and attack and undermine this president.
You know, Joe, I mean, in this, they go through a litany of crimes. They say that Michael Cohen should have substantial jail time. Talked about a side of Michael Cohen that his friends did not know about. Then they get to this part, and they take the version that is most recent about, well, at the behest of Donald Trump, he did these things, that the president was asking him to commit crimes, which is very different from what he originally claimed. Who should they believe?
Well, we don't know, right? I think ultimately, Sean, the theme here from the very beginning has been the question of, did Donald Trump and campaign associates collude with Russian officials to change the outcome of the 2016 election? And if you don't connect that dot in the court of public opinion, nobody cares about this other stuff. And I have precedent on this. We all have it. It's just a matter of remembering it. Remember, during the 90s, Bill Clinton wasn't being investigated for his affair with Monica Lewinsky. It just kind of creeped in that direction. And then when he committed perjury about that affair, and then he was impeached over it, and obviously he wasn't removed from office, he needed two-thirds of the Senate.
That was about the Paula Jones lawsuit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it ends up being another thing altogether. And when that happened, Bill Clinton's approval shot up to 73% in Gallup. In other words, if Democrats overreach here and the media overreaches here on things that aren't collusion, no one's going to care. It's almost irrelevant. I understand their crimes, but unless it's the big thing that this thing has been based on from the very beginning, it doesn't matter.
It was a very different story, Sean Spicer. And then they list a litany of crimes, and I feel sorry for Michael and Paul Manafort. These are human beings with families and lives here, and they want to believe the side that fits their narrative, not the fact that, oh, they're saying he did all these horrible things, but I'm going to believe this one thing that he said here, not that contradicts what he previously had said.
Well, right. I mean, there's two things that I think are important here. Number one, when you read both of the documents that the DOJ has put out tonight, both with respect to Manafort and with respect to Cohen, the underlying principle in both is that they lied. They didn't tell the truth. That's what they got busted for. And you made the point earlier in the show. Don't lie. Don't cheat on your taxes. File the forms correctly.
Yeah, and
but that's what this is about. They didn't believe. And that's what they're getting busted for. This has nothing to do with the president.